Good evening, Des Moines. Welcome to Doc and Lefty here on webcast1live.com, coming to you every Tuesday night from 6 to 7 in the plush accommodations of the webcast1live.com studios on the Skywalk in downtown Des Moines. And fresh off his Ragbri break is my partner in crime, Dr. Pat Petrosh. Doc, how's it going?
Well, the only break I got was from Ragbri. I didn't go on it this year, as I have done many other years. So,
okay. I was trying to lob a grenade that turned out to be a dud. I apologize for that.
It's okay.
Not to comment on.
I will tell you what, though, these guys are everywhere. I mean, they're like a swarm of locusts all over.
It's awesome. I've never done Ragbri. I'll admit that right now. I don't feel like I really owe it to myself at this point in my life because I'm a native South Dakotan. So it's not as big of a cultural thing for me, but I'd love to do it because I hear it's a great time. And I've driven doing various things from one side of the state to the other, and I love the small towns on the Ragbri routes. I really do.
They are right.
It's awesome.
You know, one of the best towns I've stopped in here recently, I was picking up a diesel engine because, yes, I do mechanical work. Believe it or not.
Oh, I believe it.
And stopped through this town called Oakland, and
Oakland, Iowa.
Oakland, Iowa. Have you ever been there?
I've never been there. Where is it?
I couldn't tell you. I just happened to stumble. I got lost in BF, Iowa, and it had a beautiful downtown area. So I thought to myself, one weekend I might just go there and stay at the beautiful Oakland hotel. It's beautiful. It's straight out of Wyatt Earp days. But it all looks pretty nice, all new.
I was down in Eagle Grove, Missouri.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For doing some recording for a friend of mine, and at the studio, and it was the craziest thing because the square, right, the town square looks like a Wild West show is about to break out. Yeah. They've got a bandstand stage, and they've got everything looks really like they got hitching posts still. That's not a joke. They have actual hitching posts outside of these different shops, and then we get inside this blank white wall plaster building, and a state-of-the-art recording studio with like $50,000 worth of equipment and a booth and the whole 9 yards. Is awesome.
Well, I can tell you, Oakland's nowhere near as big as Eagle Grove. It's really a teeny tiny town. But I had a lot of fun. I actually stopped, walked around the town a little bit, got myself can't remember. I think I got myself an iced tea or something. Here's my story about Ragbri I like to tell.
Okay.
I was, as people know, when I was a kid, I stomped around Europe a lot. And I went into, I was sitting at the Hofbrauhaus in Munich, and I was talking to people and told them where I was from. And one of the Germans there said, "Oh, I'd been on Ragbri before." And I went, "Really?" So we get to talk, and I'm talking to all my friends about what Ragbri is and everything else. And they said, "Well, what does Ragbri stand for?" Well, being a young man, I told the truth and said it stood for the Register's annual Great Beer Run across Iowa. And not knowing that there was a Register reporter, I kid you not, a Register reporter, not two people down from me. And if you've ever been at one of these beer drinking fests in Germany, you understand exactly how loud it is. He screamed over the top of everybody, "It is not a beer run! It is not a beer run!" And I laughed. I went, "Have you been on it?" And he goes, "Well, no." I went, "Then you don't know." I happen to know. I drive, earlier I thought Blake said he'd driven. I'll drive the vehicles. Sometimes I've been asked to do that for, various nonprofits and stuff, and I don't have a problem with that. I've never driven support, but I've had nothing to do with Ragbri. I want to make that perfectly clear. But I mean, and it has nothing to do with you, too.
It doesn't. In fact, we go our separate ways. We have lunch, and then we come back later and discuss the topics of the day. And that's
the way it should be.
And it's an arm's length translation. But anyway, we're not going to talk about Ragbri on the show because we have a very special guest who has made it to the studio, and we're going to bring in Doc. Since you did all the legwork and took care of this, why don't you introduce our special guest, and we'll get her in here and get her mic'd up.
Oh, right. All right. Well, now, as you all know, Dave Vout, our auditor, and there's Mary right there. That's very pretty. Yes, you said right there. That's terrific. Dave Vout retired and took one of probably the cushiest jobs you could get.
A cherry gig, as we say in the biz. Yes,
you
sir.
Want to get her set up there.
Oh, absolutely.
And then he took that cherry gig, and I was like, I don't blame him. I'd have taken it too. In fact, I put my name in for it right after he got it, hoping I could knock him out, but it didn't work. Mainly because I'm not any good with numbers, plus I'm not a CPA. So one of the things, one of the people that I have run into and went to her coming out ball, so to speak, is Mary Mossman. Is that right? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Very close.
Mosman.
All right. And so I talked to her, and she graciously agreed to be on the show today. Mary, how are you doing?
I am doing very well. Thank you for having me here. I do apologize for arriving just a moment ago. I know I was late.
That's okay, because in order to get him here on time, I have to fake like I can't make it.
It's true.
Suddenly he's on time.
It's true. There have been several occasions where I thought that I could mosey in here at about
6:30,
6:02, 6:47, and Doc is
and
kind of
the boss.
Yeah,
And so, but we don't penalize anybody for being on the show.
I promise to go to 7:03. I promise.
Yeah,
yeah.
all right.
We should probably start,
because I figure the punishment is sitting here having to talk to both of us for an entire hour.
Hey, speak for yourself. I'm delightful. But auditor now,
yes.
Auditor Mosman, is auditor? Is that the title? Is that what you get bestowed when you get appointed and elected to these sorts of things?
Yes, I am the auditor of state, or the state auditor.
Okay,
the auditor.
Great. Now we like to when we have sort of political types on the show, we like to kind of at least get a background, especially for our listeners who you're fairly new. Dave, Mr.
Val, 2 whole months. So.
Yes, 60 whole days in office so far, and
that's quite a legacy.
And things are going really well. And I'm sure that you've started taking credit for all of the wonderful economic benefits that Iowa has bestowed upon itself in the last 60 days. But you haven't been at it very long. But I'm sure that you've been around the office for a long time and have that kind of experience. Could you kind of give us your political background, or just kind of introduce our listeners to you?
Glad to, and thank you for the question. Number one, I'm a lifelong Iowan. I grew up in the Hubbard or the Hardin County area.
Sure.
Went to Iowa State. I graduated from Iowa State. I eventually achieved my CPA certificate. For 10 years, from the year 2000 through the end of 2010, I served as a Story County auditor, and that's where I came to work with members of the state auditor's office, because there's significant interactions between county officials and state officials, because that's one of the primary responsibilities of the state auditor's office, is to audit all of state government, but then to oversee the audits of local governments, the counties, the cities, the school districts, the government entities.
So in the same way
we have to take a break right now. We'll be back in just a minute. Okay. We'll get back with Lefty's question. We have State Auditor Mary Mosman, who has been very kind to come onto our show, especially late at night when she's got kids and husbands and everything else going on. Husband, one. I shouldn't say, just one, because we're conservatives. We'll be back right after break and listening to Talk and Lefty on webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're here with our special guest, Mary Mosman, who I hope will become a friend of the show, just like our other friends of the show. so far all of our friends of the show have been these crotchety conservative guys that
They haven't been crotchety.
I don't necessarily.
I don't know anybody like that.
Yeah,
so.
I get along with them okay, but it's nice to have a nice conservative on the show for a change. No offense to friend of the show Brad Zahn, friend of the show Tom Shaw, and friend of the show Mike Sporer. No offense to those guys.
Yep.
But anyway, so I was going to ask. So kind of as an analogy, would you say that you oversee the county auditors in a similar way that, say, the Supreme Court oversees each individual county court system, or is it less sort of, because that's more of a hierarchical, like a big bureaucracy? Is it like that or not as much?
I would say not as much. We do not oversee the county auditors. We oversee the audits of the local
Sure.
governments.
Okay.
And
now, do they submit those to your office then as a double review, or?
Yes. Local governments, your cities, your school districts, your counties, any local government can contract with or have the state auditor's office conduct their annual audit, or if they go through an RFP process, they can contact a local company or a private CPA firm.
What is an RFP?
Requests for proposal.
All right.
So to make it a competitive process. So they can choose an auditor's office, an independent auditor's office of their choice. When I say oversee, it means that we provide the training that the private CPA firms participate in order to conduct a governmental audit.
Sure. Now, what would you say the breakdown is between state and private as far as the I guess the audits of these localities are concerned?
That's a very good question. Of our 99 county audits, I'm going to say we do approximately 40, 45. That would just be this past year. It's going to vary from year to year, but approximately half of the counties work with our office to conduct the annual audit. Is there
any sort of factor or set of factors that would cause a county to see? Well, let me ask it this way: is the first resort usually the state or a private, or are there factors like what are some of the factors that kind of indicate whether or not it's going to go private or state?
Most of the counties that contract with an independent auditor's firm are the larger counties, and they, of course, have CPA firms in their general area. When a auditor's office comes to do an audit, there's travel expenses. So our office does have a number of accountants, a number of CPAs that travel the state to get to these remote areas, the counties that do not necessarily have a CPA firm within a nearby distance.
Okay. And that's, are there, now, those are just sort of the general administrative factors. Are
Right.
there, and this is going to sound like a loaded question, are there political factors at all? I mean, because Iowa just had a study done by some news agencies a few weeks ago. At least I think I remember that from Iowa Public Radio about the red, blue, and purple counties in Iowa and sort of the breakdown. I don't know if you saw some of that reporting, but is there a political consideration, have you noticed, in sort of your experience with the state office and now kind of being the boss at the state office?
And I understand what you're asking, and I'm going to say that I'm not going to say that there is or is not a political dynamic there. Of course, the state auditor's office is a elected position. So if somebody decides that that's why they want to RFP to have, that's totally within their discretion to do so. That is one of the reasons that a county, a city, they can choose to have the state auditor's office conduct their audit without going through the RFP process, because that's what we would then be required to do.
Sure. Are there advantages or disadvantages either way between an RFP or the state audit?
Are there advantages to doing an RFP? One could then save the perception of competition.
Sure. Okay. And that would
Right.
just not to, and I completely understand your point. And I didn't want to sort of set the tone that I was making that I have some sort of political agenda about that question, but it does suggest to me the sense of competition. It does suggest to me that sort of the more traditionally economically conservative or fiscally conservative counties, and or even localities, because there are those two. It even breaks down at a specific level. Would really appreciate that. Doc, do you have a perspective on that?
Well, I will tell you, we're talking about a subject that I have no idea about, and I was happy to have you do the interview there.
Hey, wait!
I flunked physics 3 times, man. So money. I can make money, but keeping track of it's something else.
Way to go on a limb there, my friend.
Oh, well, what do you want me to say? I was going to ask her a political question.
Hey, go ahead.
So
Most of our CPAs probably, I don't know if they took physics or not. So,
I will
plenty of
tell you,
accounting classes.
I will tell you, I took 2 accounting classes, and I was lucky in that they had, I don't know, the ones I took were business accounting courses where you had to go into a lab and do all the stuff, right? So since I'm a hard worker, I did well in the labs, but God help me on the test. So, and that's actually why my grade point wasn't a straight 4.0.
Certainly.
So.
I mean, did you have a question? Or did you forget?
Yeah, I forgot.
Okay, that's okay because I have one. I've got one teed up.
Good.
So this might be a silly question. We're talking a lot about the process, and this may seem like a kind of a silly question. And I don't even know. I don't even remember if I heard this. Is it a require? First of all, how is the auditor's position defined in state law? Is it in the Constitution or is it codified? Where does the authority come from?
It's a constitutional office, and that it's elected every 4 years. There is no requirement that the state auditor be a certified public accountant. However, it's one of the largest employers of certified public accountants in the state of Iowa. So I think Iowans do deserve to have a professional certified public accountant in this office. And I think that was a standard set by our previous state auditor, Richard Johnson. He was the first CPA.
I think he was the first one, right? Yeah.
Correct, he was. And he set a level of professionalism that has served Iowans well. And David Vout continued that professionalism, and that's my goal as well.
Do you find that because I know that he was as well, and he was sort of made his mark as not being the first, obviously, but sort of continuing that,
Right.
and that was really important to him, and he's given several interviews to that effect. Do you find in your experience now, have you worked in the state office under a non-CPA before, or had experience with a non-CPA state auditor, like the previous ones before?
I have
Johnson?
not. When
You
I
have
was
not.
in the Story County Auditor's Office, Richard Johnson was in his last couple of years, and then Dave Vout, I believe, was elected in 2002. So I was a pretty new auditor when he came on board.
Sure. What can you say? And it's interesting to me that the Constitution wouldn't demand that
Right.
And I suppose it's because maybe the certified public accountant didn't exist when the Iowa Constitution was written, but maybe they could have amended it since then. Obviously, you're going to have a biased opinion because you're a CPA yourself.
Yes.
But are there a specific skill set that you can identify for our listeners that your status as a CPA makes it more, just aside from professionalism, makes
Right.
it more advantageous for you as opposed to someone who could say be a good bureaucratic manager,
Right.
for example?
Yes, largely because of the Code of Iowa, in combination with the Constitution. The Code of Iowa does, like I said, it requires that the Auditor of State's Office audit all of state government and then oversee the audits of local governments. David Vout, he's now the chairperson of GASB, Government Accounting Standards Board. I can't even tell you the quantity of GASB statements, which are a requirement to follow when it comes to audits of governmental entities, as well as the federal funds that come down from the federal government to our local government entities, and the requirements, the standards, the regulations that need to be followed with that. So to have a non-CPA in charge of all the CPAs that are conducting these statutory responsibilities, one would hope that the CPA is good at managing people.
Well, I know.
but
Go ahead.
We want to thank State Auditor Mary Mosman for coming on. Today, we're going to be back right after I start talking about some of the sponsors of our show, especially after my blown moment just a couple minutes ago. I'm sure that Lefty just waits until I am not paying attention. And then he says, "Hey, Doc, I want to ask a question." And speaking of things that we like to do, Polk County GOP is going to be having a fundraiser. Well, they're going to be at the state fair here coming up next, 3 weeks? Boy, that's pretty close.
It's getting there. August 8th.
And so our good friends at the Polk County GOP are going to be out there. Plus, they're going to be having a fundraiser at the end of September, I believe. It's the Rob Kelly dinner again. Are you familiar with that?
The Rob Kelly dinner?
Well,
I thought that just took place.
It did,
in
but they have another
May.
dinner.
Interesting.
I think they call it Rob Kelly both times.
Okay.
I could be completely wrong though, because today hasn't been my day.
Hey, Gremlins, they carried over.
Yeah, they got in my head. You can call them. The number's right up there, 280-6438. or you can get a hold of them at polkcountygop.com. Our other sponsor is Des Moines Anesthesia. They're pain specialists with 2 offices, one in Des Moines, one in Fort Dodge. You can call them at 244-3700. And if you're having pain issues, please give them a call. Now, there is a couple of questions I want to ask you. And, obviously, the governor being from Boone, I believe that's in Story County up there. Or is that
borders.
Boone County?
It borders Story County.
Yeah.
So how did you meet the governor? Because it's one of these things where obviously the governor knows everybody, but how did you get this job? What did you do to impress the governor to get this appointment?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, she does. She doesn't know.
No,
I'll give you my perspective.
I know how she
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
Cause for speculation, counselor.
Oh my God.
Go ahead. I'm
Well,
sorry.
actually, the news of Dave Vought's retirement or resignation, I actually missed that morning's news, and it was my employer at the time, Matt Schultz, who brought it to my attention mid-morning, and he asked me if this is something that I would be interested in, and yes, I was definitely interested in it. And so I followed what they said on their webpage, and I contacted a few people about what they wanted for the applicant, and that's when I think I knew pretty much as soon as everybody else did that the governor wanted a CPA. The governor wanted somebody that would adhere to sound budgeting principles, which my 10 years as Story County auditor,
You bet.
I watched and admired Dave Vout because I really appreciated what he did with information regarding the Iowa's budget and how he put that into user-friendly terms, and he took that to the people of Iowa and gave them something to talk about with their decision makers, their legislators. And that had an impact on legislators and how they proceed with the budgeting process. Well, I kind of mimicked that in Story County, so to speak, and took information regarding Story County's budget, tried to make sure that it was communicated in a reader-friendly manner, and I think we made I know we made really good progress there. My last 2 years in office, Story County is pretty proud. We received national recognition for excellence in budget presentation, and now they even balance their budget. They do not budget to spend more than what they bring in Story County. They're very proud about that, and you don't get that way overnight, so it's a long process.
Was there a fight like that? I mean, did you have to change the culture in Story County and try to get them to go that way?
The supervisors in each county are the ones who have the statutory authority over the budget. And no, the supervisors in Story County were very supportive of it. But again, it doesn't just change overnight. We just had a lunch today in Cedar Rapids where we were talking about how when governments have revenues, tax dollars, public resources, typically we have a habit of the expenditures match the resources. Well, revenues can adjust for various reasons, one being lack of federal funding for various reasons. And when your revenues shift, your expenditures don't always have the opportunity to shift at the same pace. In other words, the programs or the services that you start providing with your revenues, people count on those. So you can't just stop them as rapidly as sometimes your revenues shift. So that's why it doesn't happen overnight to change a culture. So I'm going to say the supervisors, the decision makers in Story County, they were supportive. It just takes a little while to get there. And number one is communication, not only between the taxpayers or the citizens or the people of your government entity, but also the people who are making the decisions. So they have all the tools necessary, and they understand it, and they know everybody shares the outcome, the goal. So we got there eventually. So.
All right, though, that's good. Well, I'm going to tell you, having known Dave Vout for a long time, and having had to speak behind him a couple of times, that's a good man to emulate there. So you travel quite a bit because I'm assuming that your husband and children are still back up in Story County, or do they? And you live here like during the week and go back up? You commute back and forth?
No, I'm a commuter. I live in Story County very happily. It takes me about 45 minutes, and there's a lot of people that I know that have done that for lots longer than I have. And I was commuting, if you wanted to call it that, when I was working in Nevada. And my husband, he's a small business owner. He travels the state probably more than I do. So I'm happy to stay put in Story County and to drive to the wonderful metro area. And it's a big state, and there's a lot of great places to go. Today was I was in the office in the morning, but then we had a lunch in Marion, so the Lynn County area.
Oh my!
And then stopped to say hello to a couple folks in
My
Lynn County.
sister-in-law's area out there.
Yeah.
She's a doc out there.
You know, it is a crazy. I mean, it's a big state, but it's amazing to me how the places that you normally would have to, like, I remember in one day, I was in Council Bluffs in the morning.
Yeah.
Had a hearing in Des Moines in around noontime, and then I had to be in Burlington for right around 3:00.
Yeah.
I was able to make it happen, but it really is. You get to see a lot of the state when you're traveling around like that.
Yes, you do.
And you know, to drive, and you know, I'm really happy you made it tonight, because driving from Cedar Rapids to here, just to talk to us two guys, I mean, I feel pretty impressed with that. I must I don't know who.
Well,
Oh no, I got a few things done by the time we got back. I read through a few audits and got my
Good.
don't break your arm there,
input
pal.
there. So.
Well, I'm just excited, you know.
I know you are. Let me ask you this:
Yeah.
you mentioned federal funding,
Yes.
as part of the budget process. How much? How is it? How are federal dollars expressed in the state budget? And given that cash flow, how much sort of contact do you have with federal entities or auditor? I don't even know if it'd be auditors, but or just like DHS, for example, or Health and Human Services, for example. That sort of thing.
Right, and that's the type of federal funds that I'm referencing, and just very short and sweet. Our general fund expenditures, we're almost equal partners when it comes to local Iowa dollars and federal dollars. We don't have a lot of interaction with actual federal personnel, but the requirements of the dollars that flow from the federal level, they all have guidance to follow, and regulations and statements, GASB statements. Requirements can and do change, and so that's why it's important to have professionals at each of the government entities making sure that those regulations, that those requirements are being met in each and every situation. And they can change on a regular basis as well, or not on a, I don't mean to say they're constantly changing, but annually they can have certain details that you just need to make sure that you're on top of all the time. So Medicare, Medicaid being one of the prime examples that everybody's aware of. So making sure you're following the regulations is paramount.
We're going to be back right after the break. We are honored to have Mary Mosman with us today. She's the new state auditor from Story County. We'll be back right after the break. Please stay tuned. You're listening to Doc and Lefty. We're here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative mmanager
I'm the senior technician.
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave, and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here with State Auditor Mary Mosman, and just want to take an opportunity to thank all of our sponsors that help us not only provide us with this beautiful studio here in downtown Des Moines on the Skywalk, give us a chance to have some equipment and be out of the heat and all that good stuff, but also the sponsors of this particular show, Iowa GOP and Des Moines Anesthesia, also Bertrosher Associates and Lubinas Law Firm, and we really thank them all for taking time out of their day to sponsor the show and to provide a different perspective on local news, local politics, and some international issues, and every once in a while subsidize the fights that Doc and I used to have in our driveway when we were neighbors a few years ago.
Middle of the road, midnight shoveling. You know. Now we do actually have somebody texted in with a question. They said something very complimentary, that you're very sharp and on the ball, which, obviously, I know Matt Schultz fairly well, and, I've known the governor for a long time. So anybody they pick really is going to be on the ball, at least in their specialty. What this person wants to know is if you have any interest at all in running for Senate at this time.
Absolutely not. Number one, there's some good candidates already out in the field. And number two, this is a dream. This is my dream job, to be the Auditor of State.
Really?
Yes.
All right, great. Now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I'm not going to ask you to say politically what you feel, because I understand you're in a politically sensitive spot. But how do you think the governor keeping us out of the opting out of Obamacare, how do you think that's going to impact our finances down the road?
I cannot speak for the governor. All I can say is the way I feel, and I think that, number one, there needs to be these services provided to Iowans, but it does need to be affordable to our taxpayers. It does need to be sustainable from year to year. Those are the things that I can talk about in best budgeting practices. So do you think opting out is going to allow us to be more sustainable with this? I don't want to answer that because I cannot say that I have looked into the opting out and all the details of that.
And we don't ask gotcha questions like that, and I didn't mean to play gotcha.
No, that's fine.
But I just wanted to, you are the auditor and was kind of
I will tell you when I haven't studied up on an issue and all the details of opting out, but again, this is the governor's decision, legislative decision, and as long as they are going with something that provides the necessary services and it's sustainable and it provides the necessary services, then that's where I would go as well.
So let's say, it's 2 years down the road, it's 2015, the governor gets reelected because nobody's going to be able to stop that.
I'm on record as thinking that's probably going to happen.
All right. During that time, do you see your job at all as advising the governor in any way about, this decision is going to cost this much, that decision is going to cost that much?
That's an interesting question. The state auditor's office is an independently elected office, and I realize in this case I was appointed, but that's a statutory responsibility of the governor, and it's a one-time action. And I will say that I will not provide advice to the governor. I will provide advice to the governor and to the General Assembly, as well as inform the people of Iowa, because that's what I think the people of Iowa expect of their Auditor of State. And that is something that I think the governor and the General Assembly have learned to expect from the State Auditor's Office, so we can have comprehensive discussions about the decisions that they make and how that impacts the budget and our long-term financial future.
All right. Now, do you have? I'm assuming that you have plans to run for re-election at some point.
Yes.
All right. Do you know of anybody else that's running for auditor at this time?
I don't, but like I said, to me, this is a dream job to be the auditor of state and to have auditing be the primary responsibility. I'm sure there will be an opponent. It's pretty early. So the actual filing period for the 2014 primary election starts next year, 2014. So,
Okay.
But yes, I have stated quite publicly that I intend to seek the elected position.
All right. That's good news because, Dave Vaught, I don't think he ever had anybody running against him. They might have somebody token, but I get invited to a lot of Democratic stuff too.
Oh,
and I never got invited to anything.
I couldn't tell you, but I do. Some of the stuff that you've talked about today, it kind of led me to think about a few sort of more meta political questions that I wanted to ask you. The one, first of all, and it was kind of brought to mind with the question about the Senate run. Have you you've looked at a lot of these candidates, I'm sure, and you're familiar with most of them, I would assume, on the Republican side, because Bruce Braley is set. That's the Democratic candidate. Yeah. Have you formally endorsed anybody? Is there anybody that you would like to endorse on our show today, or throw your support behind them at all?
I have not endorsed anybody.
Do you intend to?
I do not intend to.
All right, fair enough. But
so basically, what you're telling me is, even though the state auditor is can be a political appointment and is an election issue, that basically you stay out of the dogfight between the Democrats and Republicans and simply inform the people, listen, this is the state of our state. This is the money we have. These are the programs we need to fund and things like that. So for the most part, you stay out of politics, so to speak.
That's a goal because I want to be perceived as, again, the independent voice for the people of Iowa. And yes, it is an elected position, so I am a Republican, and I'm proud to be a Republican, and I will support different candidates, but just through word of mouth kind of thing. And I don't think an endorsement from the Auditor of State would be something that any of our United States Senate candidates would expect, as long as like I said, I know most of them. I appreciate what they are doing. I wish them well in their efforts, and there will be one that prevails, and we'll see what happens after that.
One of the things with the disastrous Chet Culver administration.
I'm sorry. I thought I heard you say disastrous.
Yeah, and you heard correctly. And you've heard correctly. One of the things that I know behind the scenes is the people that were trying to advise Culver about, you can't, you can do these things, but you're going to have to either raise revenue somehow. You're going to have to, quit spending. You're going to have to do something. And I'm not blaming the entire problem with our economy in Iowa on Chet Culver. It's just that, he was the one at the helm when it hit, and, it didn't go too well. If you stumble into something like that again, where the administration isn't listening to you, what do you plan to do to try to get them back on the path of fiscal responsibility? Or do you even see it as that's your job?
I absolutely think it's part of my job. And the safety net when any of our decision makers are going in the wrong direction is the people that they all serve, that we all serve. So if people have information, they usually do something with it, and they communicate then with their decision makers. So that's what I've seen at the local level. That's what I've seen happen at the state level. And that's what I would definitely consider part of my responsibilities.
All right. So we're going to be back right after this break. We're with Mary Mosman. She's a new state auditor. We're very happy to have her with us. She had to drive a solid 2 hours down here just to be on our show, and I'm excited about that. We're here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. On webcast1live.com. We'll be back right after the break.
Drink, Dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, thanks. Well, thanks for joining us. Welcome back, and thanks for sticking around for basically the first several segments of the show. I lose count after we get to 6:30 because
I can't count past 3. He's a product of public education.
Hey! We're all products of public education, one way or the other. Are you kidding me? We've got a person seeking elected office. You're going to throw a bomb like that on the show? Shame on you. Anyway, we're here with Mary Mosman, the state auditor. And what do you have an interim title at this point, or you're appointed and that's how it goes?
Yes.
We've been talking a little bit about sort of the political aspects of your job, and goals are one thing. Goals for how you want the office to go and for how you want your election to go. All that's one thing. But I'm curious to get your opinion on. We have 2 offices, and I would think that the Secretary of State would be the other one, where there's been a little bit of chatter, not here necessarily, but in general about, well, maybe people who handle the money shouldn't be elected officials, like a partisan official, or maybe people who handle voter stuff shouldn't be an elected partisan official because, especially with the Secretary of State, and I'm not speaking I'm not going to take shots at Matt Schultz at all, but that it seems a little bit odd that the person who oversees the auditing of the state finances would be a Republican or a Democrat, and the person who oversees elections of partisan officials would be a Republican or a Democrat. Can you speak to your own opinion about whether those offices should be elected or whether they should be in some sort of nonpartisan kind of appointment, I guess, the way that we draw up counties, for example, or elect judges in this state?
Okay. Very interesting question. And I must say I have heard this question or this concern for a number of years, because remember, I was the Story County Auditor and Commissioner of Elections, and those positions, they are putting themselves on the ballot at the same time that they are putting the President of the United States candidate on the ballot. So there's concern by individuals, by people, and possibly rightly so. That being said, the people who are eventually elected to those positions, the county auditors, the state auditors, the Secretary of State, they take oaths of office to enforce the laws and to adhere to the Constitution. They take oaths of office, and I think, I'm going to speak on behalf of most elected officials, they take that oath of office seriously. And the one nice thing about the elected people, the elected officers, they have a lot of different bosses out there. They have the Republicans, the Democrats, the independents. They have the people who are their bosses. And if the people do not like the jobs that these elected officials are doing, they can unseat them just by the next election. And I realize that maybe not be timely enough for a lot of people, but that is how we are currently set up in the state of Iowa.
Sure. Now, I guess to kind of follow up on that point, sort of the more we talked a little bit about how you strive not to be sort of a partisan person, because let's face it, there are good money handlers in both parties, and there are bad money handlers in both parties, and you're trying to kind of stay in not necessarily like the political middle, but at least to demonstrate sound fiscal practices. That's your number one goal for the state, I would assume. But you have long experience dealing with Democrats and Republicans in budgeting practices as a county auditor and in the state auditor's office, and now being the state auditor seeking the elected office in 2014. Do you have opinions about, more so than one's better than the other, obviously, but specific opinions about the budgeting practices of a Democratic auditor as opposed to a Republican auditor? Because I believe if you win election in 2014, you'll be the third Republican auditor in a row, who's a CPA also, starting back to Mr. Johnson we talked about before. Can you speak to some of that? Like, what would be? I guess if I'm a Democrat, and I am, and I see your name on the ballot. And now that I know you personally, I have a greater incentive to vote for you. But what would lead me to break party lines to vote for a Republican auditor as opposed to a Democratic auditor if you run opposed? That's a long question. I apologize for that.
I will try I will try and answer as best I can on that one. I will not be able to say and even try and convince anybody that a Republican auditor is better than a Democratic auditor. If both of the goals of the Democratic auditor, the Republican auditor, are to the fiscal responsibility of the state. Because again, we're not making auditors, whether you're talking local county auditors or the state auditor, they're not making decisions regarding the budget. That is up to our Republicans and our Democrats. Right. The role of the auditor is to provide the fiscal responsibility surrounding the decisions made by the Republicans or the Democrats. So if either one of those two, the Republicans, the Democrats, if they can have confidence that the person in the auditor's chair is going to be, and I'm using the word independent, but maybe a better word is autonomous, using just professional responsibility and not political ramifications for the decisions made, then we're all in the same. We should all be in the same place. And I do want to say that I've been using the word independent, which I do know I'm going to be a Republican candidate for this particular office, and that I have been known to support Republican candidates in the past. But what I want to make sure is in my responsibilities that I am conducting those responsibilities with complete non-political points of view.
Sure. And right before we're going to take a break here in a second, but I wanted to ask you this one question because I thought of it when the Senate question came in. This is an unprecedented time, not just in this. Iowa has been better than most, but in this country especially, of partisan bickering and gridlock and just all out. We had the Senate minority leader say the Senate majority leader was going to be the worst majority leader of all time if he did a certain thing, and just bombs back and forth. What would possess you, with all due respect, to seek elected office at this time in our history? It just seems, it boggles my mind. I mean, we were joking before the show that we should start a third party, but it boggles my mind that anybody would want to do this as a dream job, as you put it.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. This is not a bad time.
That's okay.
Yeah, this is not a bad time to be getting into the public arena. This is when good people should be trying to get into the public arena if they know that they can have an impact. And when times are tough, that's when most people that like a challenge and that have goals, that's when they want to get involved. So this is a really good time. We do have challenges in Iowa, and we have Democrats, we have Republicans, all who took oaths of office to do the very best they can in their jobs to follow the laws, follow the Constitution, and good for them. And if we're working together, and I'm glad we're not all robots. I like that we have different opinions out there, and that leads to some very interesting conversations and hopefully some progress, and there's definitely going to be some compromise, but it's a good time when we have these challenges in front of us for people to seek public office.
All right. Now, that's a great segue into trying to get the robots out of office, because one of our primary supporters is BoatCountyGOP.com. Try to get the robots from the Democratic Party out of office. Their number is 280-6438, PokeGOP.com. They're going to be out at the Iowa State Fair. They do a lot of good works out in the public. They provide a lot of good information. And, of course, they support the Republican Party, which, for me, is a good thing. Also, Des Moines Anesthesia is a sponsor of our show. They help us keep the lights on and help provide some supportive services for us. Their number is 244-3700. Of course, that is 515 area code for our international listeners. And they have 2 offices, one in Fort Dodge and one in Des Moines. Now we're going to get back to Mary Mosman, who's been very gracious to join us tonight for the entire hour.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's really nice. She drove all the way down from Cedar Rapids. Now after this, she's got to drive all the way up to her family and all this. How do you juggle this? I mean, how do you get to the kids to soccer practice and catch the games and all that? I mean, I know you have an excellent scheduler.
Yeah.
And is that the secret, or is there, you just say, well, I'm going to set this time aside for my family?
Well, I always want to set time aside for my family. They are my highest of priorities. I do have an absolutely wonderful husband whose schedule is also a bit eclectic every now and then. And as much as I enjoyed driving to soccer practice and stuff, my girls are a little older than that, or our girls are a little bit older than that. Our oldest is, she's actually off in grad school right now, but she is a teacher at East Sac County High School.
Holy cow, you have kids when you were 12 or something?
No.
Good. All right. Well,
I'm much older than that.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and then the other 2, they're also in college, one at University of Iowa, one at University of Northern Iowa, and they're both camp counselors, so I don't see them very much this summer because they are enjoying their summer helping other campers enjoy their summers. And then our youngest, she's actually, this week, she is a camper at the camp where her sisters are counselors. So it's just my husband and I this week, and they're, even the youngest, she drives herself to a number of things. I try and make it sure I'm there for all of the important things as I have. But yeah. And again, I'm not unique in making the commute and making sure that the family stays the highest of priorities. And the people in the Auditors of State's office, they know that, and I think that's one of the things we all agree. Everybody has a family. Everybody has that as a priority, but we have important jobs to do as well. So,
that's terrific. That's pretty. I appreciate that answer, because I know the governor drove down from Boone all the time when he was president of the school over there, and I know that when what happened that he had to leave the governor's office, the governor's mansion. I can't remember.
I don't remember, but
looks like we got a call. Strap on your helmets.
Oh, we do?
Yeah. We're excited.
We have a guest and a caller. I can't even believe it.
Oh man!
One of these days we're gonna have to stop making jokes about how this is such a low rent show, because we're certainly pulling in the high rent talent.
Yes.
Hey, caller, you're on the air with Doc and Lefty. How are you?
I'm good. This is Dan.
Dan, where are you calling from?
Des Moines.
Here in Des Moines. Dan from Des Moines. Do you have a question for our guest today?
Yeah. I'd like the auditor's opinion on if someone's receiving assistance from the government, does she feel like that's a conflict of interest to allow that person to vote in any way, either by receiving a government check or receiving financial aid, student loans, however,
corporate welfare,
receiving assistance? Yeah, exactly. How does she feel about that? Is that a conflict of interest, and should those people be allowed to vote?
Yeah, that's for you.
Okay. Absolutely not a conflict of interest. I can't think of a single person where they don't receive some sort of government service, whether it's in the form of a check or in the form of public safety or anything. So absolutely not. There are certain reasons, such as not being a citizen, not being a resident of the applicable area, not being old enough. Those are certain reasons where one has lost or does not have the right to vote. But receiving government services, no, there is no conflict of interest there.
Well, I think what his point is not necessarily government services, but you get people that are lifetime welfare members. You get people that take out student loans, which these really aren't services or payments. Farmers that take subsidies, especially corporate. I mean, corporate welfare is a big thing. And of course, as Lefty and I have discussed before, you as a boss, you can tell your people how to vote, right?
But I mean, obviously everyone would receive, police coverage and things like that. Specifically payments.
Well, I guess, Dan, if you don't mind, this is Lefty. If you don't mind asking, what exactly do you mean by a conflict of interest, I guess?
Well, if you're the governor, for instance, and you're in charge of the budget, and you can give yourself a raise.
I see what you're saying.
To reappoint yourself or hire other people underneath you. I mean, that seems to be Or, let's say you're on welfare, right? And you know a candidate is going to try and increase welfare payments by 20%. Isn't that a conflict of interest to say I'm going to vote for somebody who is going to increase welfare payments so I can get a bigger paycheck?
Well, I guess, and I don't want to. I don't want to step on the auditor too much, but since the question was directed at her, I guess I would see that as more of a political issue. So if you have a person who's accepting government assistance and they have a candidate that's going to protect that government assistance and another candidate who's going to gut it, that to me sounds more like a political decision rather than sort of voting in my interest, because you have examples of electorates that sort of quote unquote vote outside their self-interest all the time. You have, for example, you have states like Mississippi and Texas who in their Medicare and Medicaid payments vastly take in more money from the federal government than they pay back out in services where they're kind of more of a drain, and yet they vote consistently for Republican candidates that will strip that funding away from them. And so I feel like it's sort of how the political system works, but I do appreciate the question, and I know that the auditor appreciates the question.
And I'm going to chime in because I wouldn't know who would make the decision of where to draw the line, because as was mentioned, there's elected officials who have discretion over what is, they have decision-making authority. So where would one draw the line, and who would make that choice? So who would end up being eligible voters if there was a conflict of interest anytime that a payment of some sort was received?
All right. Do you have any other questions, Dan?
No, that's all I got tonight.
Hey, that's great. Well,
thanks a lot for tuning in, man.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys taking my call.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
I thank Dan for calling in. That was it. I got to say that I've never really thought of it in those terms before, and it's an interesting thing. And I didn't want to get too much with him while he was asking you questions, but I had heard the BBC has been doing a series on official corruption around the world with different in different countries and different sorts of governments, and they had a contributor on who they were giving an interview to who said that the practice of legislative officials, like our House of Representatives, for example, in the Congress and DC, who vote to give themselves pay raises, is the most broad or most clear sign of official corruption. This wasn't the BBC's position. I'm not sure it's my position either. It is sort of interesting that, rather than put it to a public referendum, we have elected officials because we have a Republican democracy making those decisions. I don't know if you have an opinion on that or not, but
no, but I think that falls right in line to the question that Dan was asking.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, we're gonna sign off here. We got a few minutes left. I want to ask Mary just one question: why should people vote for you for re-election? That's a question you're going to get a lot. Mm-hmm. So might as well practice here.
Okay, I will say that it's because I had 10 years of experience with local government finance. I am a certified public accountant. I understand the value that this particular office brings to the people of Iowa, and I would be honored to continue to serve the people.
All right. That's a great answer. And you're from Story County, a lot of experience up there, got that culture turned around. Hopefully she'll be able to get this culture turned around down there on the hill.
We won't even hold it against you that you're a Cyclone fan here in this studio.
Panthers. so
I cheer for them all.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We want to thank our people for texting in some questions and for Dan calling in. Next week is going to be a rematch from last week. We're going to discuss race. There's a couple of friends of mine that said they would come on and discuss their views on race and everything else, because this, especially as Trayvon Martin has really rocketed the race debate right in the middle of everything. And I think it's time to sit down as Americans and as Iowans and try to have an honest debate about it. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week is race. The race baiters versus the race haters versus, those that sit on the sidelines and just watch the entire carnage. We want to thank Mary Mosman for showing up and talking to us about the state auditor position. It sounds to me like that's probably more important than the governor spot because, governors come and go, but getting a good auditor is tough to do.
I couldn't agree with you more, but yeah,
that's
certainly
unfortunate when we agree.
Our deepest thanks to you and folks. Tune in next week because it's going to be a very interesting discussion. It's going to be very productive, and I'm sure that that Doc and I won't get after it too particularly hard on air, at least.
No, not on air. Now, the Lefty does have a couple of things going on at the Ducktail on Thursday, right?
No, it's Saints Beaverdale.
Beaverdale. All right, yeah,
performing there from 7 to 10.
Yeah, that'll be great. Bring your husband down if you're not doing anything. He's a great musician. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll be here next week from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. Again, we want to thank Mary Mosman, State Auditor, for stopping by. We'll see everybody next week.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of them.